Just keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys.
Welcome to the all-encompassing sports podcast.
Oh, he's having it go!
You'll be hearing from all of the biggest newsmakers in sports.
Hello, you play to win the game.
Where you'll hear from all types of guests on all topics.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
What the hell's going on out here?
And now, with sports, Rob.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of With Sports Rob. I, of course, am Rob. Today's guest is my good friend, Andrew SIndell. He's a lifelong Jets fan, a lifelong Mets fan, long suffering on both counts. He also likes the Rangers and the Knicks. So I welcome him to the show. He's got a lot of insight on the Jets. He's been following them for decades now, and he really loves them. It's his first love in terms of sports. So let's hear from Andrew. Hey, Andrew, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to join.
Good to see you. And of course, as I started with Rob Adams, I want to start with your background in sports, how you got into the teams that you like. I know you're basically a New Yorker, so you've got some affinity there, but what's your story?
Yeah, it's a long checkered past of sports teams that I like. My earliest memories, I think, were because of my dad. He was a New York sports fan, right, for many years. He grew up in Brooklyn and was mostly a football and baseball fan. He was a longtime Jets fan. I think he even saw them, back in the day at Shea Stadium when they played there. And then when the Mets, started the franchise in the 60s, he kind of became a Mets fan. So in my younger years, I have, very fond memories of going to Shea Stadium with my dad for Mets games. We went to some Jets games. We even went to a couple away games when I was a kid for both football and baseball. So that was kind of my early years. It was obviously, the influence of my dad being in New York, and he was a pretty passionate sports fan. So when it comes to baseball and football especially, hockey and basketball, he wasn't as much of a fan, but I just kind of over time became a Rangers fan and a Knicks fan because of, New York, and those were kind of teams that I followed. And then college sports, I started to get into University of Arizona. My sister went there for graduate school, so I kind of started following the teams, and then followed the basketball and the football team a bit.
Yeah, fantastic. I have a similar story about my sports fandom with New York teams. My dad was a big Mets fan, so that's how I got into them. Basically, we were born into it. We were born into all this Mets Jets stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do want to recall. I do want to mention that we both attended the Jets game the weekend before Thanksgiving, watching them lose. I think they were leading at halftime.
They were leading at half.
Eventual loss.
Yep. Yeah. They were leading, but we knew that wouldn't. The entire game, but it was the first half was entertaining at least.
Yeah, so that brings us to the Jets. That's what our main focus for this podcast is going to be. We'll get into some other stuff down the line, maybe some of the other New York sports teams you referenced. But what are your thoughts on the Jets' overall season this year?
Oh, man, what are my thoughts? Bad. Really, really rough. Unfortunately, being a longtime Jets fan, my expectations, I guess, are fairly low at this point, after having so many down seasons. I think they're, the franchise with the longest time of not making the playoffs, when it comes to franchises, right?
All sports.
All sports, exactly, which just boggles my mind. First team ever to not have an interception, I believe, during the season, right? In the history of football in NFL, which is also, is hard to believe. So, when they got Justin Fields, I was ambivalent. I wasn't crazy about the move, but I also was not totally against it. He was a quarterback that had experience, right? Had some good years, some not so great, but, I figured why not give it a shot? And then I think, as the season moved forward, it was obvious, right? He just kind of didn't have it. The Jets injury, right, with Garrett Wilson was really difficult, right? And they had some other, injuries that made the season very difficult. But overall, it was a pretty low point, right, this year.
There's a lot to unpack there, as you mentioned a bunch of things. And I'll start with this because you actually introduced me to this fact. Garrett Wilson didn't have 40 yards receiving this year, and he led the team in receiving yards.
Yeah, which hard to believe, right? He only played a handful of games. Just kind of. I think it goes to show until they made that move, right, where they made the trades and they got two receivers that seemed to do fairly well, and I think might have a future with the team. He was really their only reliable target. In their run game, I've always liked Breece Hall. I know he's, his contract, right? That's going to be a situation, I think, for this upcoming year. So that's a concern. And then, they made those trades, which I think, there were some fan kind of favorite players that were traded, but I think in the end it was it made sense, and they got something back, and then all the draft picks. I think that's probably the biggest part, right, are the draft picks that they were able to get.
We'll get to that a little bit down the line. But yeah, so your thoughts on Aaron Glenn and how he affects the team culture, what he's doing there, how you feel about his future going forward. Obviously, we'll get into some of the ideas of maybe what you'd like to see there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was definitely excited and on board when I heard that Aaron Glenn was going to be the coach. He had coordinator experience. I believe he was with the Lions, right? Before joining the Jets. And, he's one of the players I really remember, right, from my younger years, right? It was him. Wayne Corbett was one of my favorite players.
Pennington as well,
Pennington,
right?
Keyshawn Johnson, right? Like, so I think it did add something that he was a former Jet, right? He wanted to be the coach here, obviously. He was very passionate about it. So I think when it came to like the fan base, most people, at least that I talked to, were pretty excited, right, to give him a try. And then, unfortunately, as the season went on, it seems like he kind of lost the team. I don't know how much, how much of a role he had early on and kind of keeping their expectations up, even though they were losing. But it seemed like as the season went on, he even admitted it, right? The last couple games, it became like sort of almost an effort question, which was hard. So I think the difference between when he first came, I was excited. I think a lot of Jets fans were. And it went downhill so quickly that it's hard to have faith in him coming back next year.
Right, that's a good point. And obviously there were a decent amount of coaches this year who would have been good. Stefanski, Harbaugh, a couple other guys that might have made him look at. I don't know if you know this, but Hafley just got signed by the Dolphins as the coach. And well, this is a topic we'll get to a little bit more down the line, but I will bring up the fact that Saleh just got a head coaching job again.
Did he? I heard he was interviewing for a couple head coaching jobs, right?
He got the Tennessee job.
Oh, yes, I did hear that, actually. You're right. So, like you said, when the kind of the coaching carousel started, right, over the past couple weeks, when, I started hearing some of the names, like you said, Harbaugh and different folks that were available with head coaching experience, right, that had done well, to know that the Jets were pretty much staying with Aaron Glenn, that was really difficult and hard just to hear all these names, right, going off the board. It's like the Jets are staying with Aaron Glenn, who really didn't have a good season. I mean, I know part of it was, right, they didn't have maybe the best personnel, but he really lost the team. Like you said, I think it was more like him losing the team. Rather than all the losses they had, it just seemed like the locker room kind of might have quit. So that's hard.
No, that's fascinating. You make a good point. If they're quitting on the team this year, I mean, who knows what they're doing in the future? How long is it going to last? Is this going to be another 1, 2, 3 year situation with a coach?
Exactly, like with Saleh, right? They kind of gave him a little bit of a chance, and then they kind of kicked him to the curb, right? It goes to show. I think having a coach that has head coaching experience, it seems like it probably does make a big difference. So it's hard.
You can find the right court. I mean, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on Aaron Glenn, but you can find the right, because Mike McDonald in Seattle is having a fantastic year. You can find some coordinators that can do it. But yeah, the Jets don't seem to have any luck with anything.
No, exactly. Yeah, I feel like for the Jets, they try all these things, right? It's rough.
Yeah, so one of the things that Aaron Glenn did do is he benched Justin Fields down the stretch in favor of Tyrod Taylor. How'd you feel about that move? I know you kind of discussed your feelings about Justin Fields, but just the move on its merits.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought he should have almost done that sooner. Just watching Justin Fields out there as the season went on, he just he seemed lost. He wasn't reacting, to the plays as fast. He was constantly, kind of caught in the pocket, right, and getting sacked. His mobility wasn't what I thought it would be. I feel like there were a lot of sacks he took where he could have thrown the ball away. And then even when guys were open, his accuracy wasn't great. And then we know kind of one of the faults for him, right, like the deep pass, right? They didn't really throw too many deep passes, and that could have been because of his ability. Also, the receivers, right, they had. So when he went to Tyrod Taylor, I thought that was the right move. Like I said, I might have even done it sooner.
Right.
But, Tyrod Taylor, listen, he's not an MVP quarterback. He's probably not going to win you a lot of games, but he's serviceable, right? I mean, he knows how to manage a game.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I got that. And, of course, right, then he got hurt, and they had to go to the third-string guy, which, was he was put in.
Quinn Cook? Is that Quinn Cook?
Brady Cook? No.
Brady Cook, I think you're right.
Yeah, Brady Cook, yeah. So, that was a tough situation, and honestly, right by that point, the season was over anyway, so it was kind of the end.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I know Glenn tried to instill his culture with cutting that punt returner early in the season.
You're right.
It didn't really do much for them, and there were other fumbles, there were other mistakes by the team. He didn't cut anyone else. It was just kind of an odd situation where he decided to cut.
And I think he said he was using that as an example, right?
Yeah,
like I'm gonna cut this guy. I mean, and I hate to go into like the woe is me, but the Jets as a franchise, right? It really is one of the most difficult teams to root for, I think, in all of sports, right? There's just, whenever there's some hope, it seems like something goes wrong, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, right, the first year, everyone knows about, what happened there. And, after this season, you kind of say, maybe they should have kept Aaron Rodgers after all that. Who knows?
Well, yeah, his 2024 season, he was pretty good down the stretch. But, yeah, I guess, the new regime wanted to have someone to mold in their image.
Right. So, it's I don't know what's going to turn the franchise around. It's really ownership. I think until Woody Johnson is out, I don't think this franchise is going to take too many steps forward. That's really what I think the problem is. The ownership group is just not what we need.
Yeah, well, we're kind of focusing on this season and down the line. We'll get to some of the more draft questions and all that stuff down the line. But, his son actually came to the locker room at one point and made fun of Mike White the year he was having that great season. And he had like a fractured rib or something, and he was playing through it. And that just, that's the kind of culture that Woody instills there.
It's not, even hearing him speak about the team, it's just... I don't know if his, intentions are where they should be, right? He has some political motivations, maybe, right? Yeah. I mean, I just, and I know his son, right, was kind of given some control, right, for a while or helping, but it's that revolving, right, coach carousel, players getting hurt, draft picks that, they've had some good draft picks, but then it comes down to the quarterback, right? They really... like you said, Mark Sanchez, Pennington, right? When has there been, someone else that's really been, made a difference?
As a Packers fan, I would obviously say Brett Favre.
Yes, right. Right. We might agree to disagree.
I can appreciate that. That's fair. I don't think he was good for the. I'm not going to get too much into it, but he was hurt that season. He was playing because he wanted to maintain his the games played streak. He was good up until that point, but I think they were 8-8 that year or 7-9 or something. It was just not a good year. So you talked about some of the players that they've drafted that have turned out to be pretty good. A couple of those guys are Williams and Sauce, and both those guys got traded this year. How do you feel about the Sauce trade overall, and what do you think about the return, which is a couple draft picks? Yeah,
I mean, the draft picks, I think that was the right way to go, right? I mean, we knew the team wasn't really going anywhere this season, right? And they needed help in a lot of positions. So I think getting those, and they're pretty, right there within the first couple of rounds.
I think they got 2 first rounders.
Yeah, I think
they got 2 first rounders.
Which is pretty good for, Sauce had a lot of hype, obviously, right? When he started with the Jets, he was kind of, a little kind of showy. People were super into him, right? He was, had a good reputation, I guess, and being one of the best defensive backs. I don't think, especially in the last season or two, I don't think his performance was as good as, maybe it was hyped up to be, unfortunately. So, I know some folks were more upset. Once I heard about the draft picks, and I know you felt like it was a pretty good return, right, overall.
Yeah, very good for him. Yeah. And about the Williams trade, I mean, that was kind of, I think that was a lower draft pick.
Yeah, I think it was a lower pick.
But how did you feel about losing him, just in terms of how the Jets were approaching that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, they got, right, they have those other two receivers they got, right?
Well, that was one of them is from I think that the Dallas trade included the Texans, because Metch came from the Texans.
Yes, right.
And Donnie Mitchell came from the Colts. In the Gardner trade.
In the Gardner trade, right? Yeah, the source Gardner trade. So, yeah, I mean, those receivers. I mean, honestly, I didn't know much about them, but I think they're right. They might be serviceable. Maybe a second or a third receiver, third or fourth receiver, right, moving forward. So they didn't have much to really work with this season, but I think they showed some glimpses, right, of at least being serviceable for the team.
No, for sure. Mitchell had some deep catches, which is his specialty, and Mechie was one of the highly touted college players coming out of Alabama the year he came out, but he got stricken with cancer, and that destroyed his rookie year.
Yeah.
So he kind of fell off the Texans depth chart because he wasn't performing for them because he wasn't playing, and he was a hype player coming into and out of college at Alabama. So yeah, he looked good sometimes. The game we saw, he looked pretty good.
Yeah,
I think he had 5 or 6 catches.
He did. And and then it's like the thing that drives me nuts about the Jets. They keep getting, and this might be a little off topic, but they keep, they have tight ends that look like they're promising, and right?
Yeah.
No one they don't call. I feel like they should call more plays that focus on the tight ends, right? They've had some good tight ends that it just never works out, whether they get hurt or they're just not used as much, or, the plays aren't really designed for them. That's one area I would like to see them focus on utilizing a little more, maybe the tight end.
And early on this year, that would have made more sense because Fields is not a deep thrower, as you said. Looking over the middle towards the tight end would have been a great adjustment for the Jets to make. Yeah,
and
so I don't know if that was a. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and luckily Breece Hall, right? I mean, he by far was the best offensive player on the team, and he had some games which weren't, fantastic, but he was really the only guy, right, that you could kind of count on to give you some decent yards, like you said, because Fields really didn't throw the ball too deep, right? It was kind of some shorter passes, but not really to the tight ends either.
No, for sure, but you make a good point. Breece Hall, as you mentioned, I think in one of your segments you were saying he's not under contract next year, so obviously they paid Gardner, they didn't pay Hall, so how do you feel about that?
You're right. I don't know. I'm always thinking you need to have like at least one player. I always, ideally I'd like to keep that, one of your best players, like just someone that's been there for a while, kind of, is a workhorse, right? Has shown a lot of potential and a lot of breakout speed, right? There's some runs where he would really so I would love to have him back. I know it might not happen salary cap wise or what maybe depending on the draft, but I would I think he's a good culture guy. I think he's a good locker room guy, so I would like to see if they can figure out a way to bring him back.
I would agree, yeah, and obviously Braylon Allen coming back should be decent, but it would be nice to have Breece there as well.
Yeah, well, you're right though. But Braylon Allen also showed some glimpses too. So it's really going to be a lot about what happens in this draft. What positions do they look to kind of fill?
Right. And speaking of the draft, obviously they got all those draft picks. Before I think it was Saturday, there were 2 quarterbacks in the draft who were gonna be good in terms of Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. Dante Moore, of course, announced he's going back to Oregon, so now really the only first-round draft pick in that draft class is Fernando Mendoza. So what do you see as well, first, I don't know if you've got thoughts on what they should do in the draft. Maybe you don't know any players, but maybe positions or what general strategies they should have.
Yeah, I mean, and with Mendoza, right? I don't follow college football that closely, but of course I did watch him in the championship game, right? And if the Jets had a chance, which they most likely don't, right? Being that they're the second pick, the Raiders, everyone, right, is pretty sure they're going to take Mendoza at this point. So I was excited when I saw Mendoza. Like if there was any way to maybe go for it, it would be great. But it's probably not realistic. So, draft wise, at the second pick, do they maybe take the best player available? Right. I mean, it's still early on, and they take whoever's the best, on the board. There's a lot of there's so many holes on the team. The pressure, the defense putting pressure on quarterbacks wasn't as successful, I don't think, as I thought it would be, right? The offensive line, right? They all played the entire season together. I guess we're supposed to be excited about that. But, the defensive line, I thought was going to be better. I think the defense overall, right? I think we all thought the defense wasn't going to be great, but I mean, there were some games that the defense it wasn't even competitive, Well,
as you said, they had no interceptions all year.
No interceptions, blown coverages, not causing many fumbles, right? It was really, the defense, I think, was the most disappointing part. So, they need some help there. When it comes to quarterback, I think at this point you try to maybe bring a veteran in, right? Someone that has experience, like a Tyrod Taylor kind of person, unless you draft someone in one of the later rounds, which is fine. It's more of like a project, right? You see if they turn out to be anything, but not someone you're necessarily counting on.
No, for sure. I don't know exactly what I would do with the draft either. You make a good point. Just going best available at number 2 could make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough proposition.
Right,
Got a
right.
lot of holes.
They have a lot of holes, right? So it's hard to know. Yeah, I don't know where they go with that second pick, but
yeah, that's just the Jets. Every year it seems like they got a decent draft pick and they got a lot of holes and they don't know what the heck to do with it.
I know. It comes down to, as much as you don't want to always say quarterback, but until you have someone that could really, manage the game and make the team better, the Jets their quarterback play has been so inconsistent. It's hard.
No, for sure. Like you said, you mentioned Sanchez is kind of a mediocre quarterback. He was, but at least he was a game manager. He could hand off the ball.
Exactly, right? Someone that's not making too many mistakes, right? They don't have to be an MVP, launching big passes all the time, but just someone, right, that's consistent to an extent. So,
yeah. So yeah, let's get back to the current Jets. We're looking a little bit towards the future here, but what do you think about how would you they're not really out there. I'm kind of asking you to get in your own lane here and just give me your thoughts on your thoughts of the comparison between Aaron Glenn and Robert Saleh. How they obviously Glenn's only had a year, but we know how you feel about him. But give us your thoughts on that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny when Robert Saleh came in, I was super pumped. Right when I heard him first speak,
yeah,
I mean. Yeah. He seemed like a really good football guy. He just seemed like a good guy, right? Like someone you want to be around. That's how I always sort of, and that's just right from hearing him when he would talk during the, press conferences or just stories about him. He seemed like, he was a great defensive mind and also like the type that would motivate players. It seemed like that, right? And then unfortunately, right, things didn't go well. And he, I kind of always liked Saleh. Things didn't go well, right? It didn't work out with him. And it's similar with Glenn, right? When he first came in, he talked a good talk, right? It was about changing the culture of the team, making them, a team that would be competitive, they would, have max effort, everything like that. So, I feel like they both kind of set up the seasons, right? They said the right things.
Yeah.
They seem to have, past experience. And then, unfortunately, right, the Saleh situation, it I don't think was all on him, right? There was major injuries and things like that. And now with Glenn, like you said, it's one season. But honestly, if all those coaches weren't available, let's say it was like a small market of premium coaches available, I would say, I guess you give Glenn one more season. What's the big deal? But once you started hearing that these really well-recognized coaches, right, were available, the Bills coach, right, now they got rid of him, which I didn't think was going to happen. Of course, Pittsburgh. So I think that's the part where they already committed to it, and I'm like, it's a missed opportunity.
Agreed. I'm on the same page with you on that one. My feelings on Saleh, I like Saleh better than Glenn. I was not as high on Glenn as you were when he was coming in this year. I was excited, but his defense didn't rank very well in Detroit the past couple of years.
You're right. You did bring that up, right, when we talked about that. Yeah.
But he did seem like a culture guy, and he came from a winning organization, but so did Saleh. Saleh came from San Fran, which is a winning organization.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, and then, right, Saleh was back on the Niners, right, this past year's defensive coordinator again, yeah.
And they look, they were down for a lot of the year, but they had a lot of injuries, and he kind of pulled them through that stretch and made it a little bit better down the stretch. So I see what Tennessee sees in him. Obviously, I don't mean to create bad blood, but Rob Adams last week said what Saleh did in San Francisco this year is an indictment on the Jets. So if you want to talk about that, you can talk to him.
Oh man, yep.
But let's talk about the special teams. How did you feel about that unit?
Yeah, when your possible best player is your punter and field goal kicker, there's probably something to be said about that, right? Yeah. Those were literally, their punter would pin teams back, right? I mean, he really was very good. And then, of course, field goal wise, right? They were one of the what did he make, like a crazy amount of field goals in a row, right? Without a miss, within a certain range.
Wasn't that to start the season as well? Didn't he have like a stretch at the beginning of the season that he just was making everything?
I mean, almost making everything. Yeah. So and they had a couple decent run backs and things, some punt returns. So the special teams, strangely enough, was probably one of the highlights overall. So I guess if you want to find a silver lining in a really, really bad season, that would probably be it for me.
But as you said, having your kicker as your best player is probably not, or your punter, whichever way.
Either way, right?
Yeah.
It was rough.
So I'm going to reveal a fact about you that our viewers won't know. You hate the Giants, right?
I do. I have a pretty deep hatred for the Giants. Probably not as much as the Yankees, who I hate more, but... Yeah.
Well, I get that hate. If you're a Mets fan, you gotta hate the Yankees. I don't think you're unique, but you're in a select few people that don't at least appreciate the Giants as a New Yorker. But yeah, I think it's not as common for Jets. I mean, obviously it's a division between Jets and Giants fans in New York, but it's not a hatred generally. But yeah, I get the Yankee hate. So who do you think's better prepared for the future, the Jets or the Giants?
Listen, it's a great question because I've been thinking about this a lot. If I was a Giants fan right now, I would be pumped. I would be really excited for the future, to be honest. You have a quarterback, right, that just gets it, Maybe he's not taking them to the Super Bowl right now, but he manages the game. He makes good decisions besides sometimes, right, when he runs and doesn't give himself up. But besides that, overall, he seems like he has what it takes. Scadaboo and, Neighbors, right? They were out for, most of the season.
Big portion of the season.
I think
Neighbors
both of them,
season,
I mean, I think both of them are game changers. I mean, these are really guys that could change the complex of a game. I think they're great. And now with the coach, I think the Giants have a much brighter future than the Jets. Even though the Jets have the draft picks, I think the Giants have guys that have already shown, right, that they know what it takes. So if I was a Giants fan, I'd be more excited than a Jets fan, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I got to agree with you. And I think the Harbaugh hire kind of solidifies that.
And the Giants, I think with Harbaugh, that maybe, I was just going to say, I mean, right, people said if they could pull that off, right, that could really, it could be franchise changing potentially, right? I mean, they've had so many down seasons. You bring in a proven guy that wanted to go to the Giants, right? It seems like he actually wanted to. I mean, I know they gave him like one of the biggest, I guess, contracts, right, for a coach or something like that in history. But you do what it takes, right, to get him. So.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, Dart is, last week Rob said that Dart's better than Penix in terms of which position's better, Atlanta or
That's
New York,
true, right? Because he was debating maybe between the two.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great situation. And the thing about that, their defense was down this year, but they've got some nice pieces on defense that could turn into something, especially under Harbaugh, who's a special teams coordinator, but obviously has some knowledge of defense as well.
You're right. No, I think that's a really good point, right? They have some defensive guys that maybe underperformed a bit, but still have potential, right? So, I think if you're comparing Jets to Giants and like even the immediate or even longer term future, I think the Giants have a leg up.
So we got the playoffs. The Rams are playing the Seahawks. Obviously, the Rams played the Bears last week. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, the Rams Bears. That was it was really an exciting game, right? I mean, the play at the end of regulation, pretty much, right on that fourth down.
Yes, very end. Yeah.
I mean, he's falling backwards, literally falling back. His momentum is back, and he heaves it, and that was right fourth down. That was it. I mean, they don't complete that. It's over, and he throws a freaking touchdown pass. Like I mean, literally, you see him. He just launches it, and it was just that was incredible. So that was, I was just excited seeing that. I mean, I kind of like both teams, but just seeing this, the Chicago story is kind of excited, right? They've had a lot of pretty rough seasons, right, with not being good. So I kind of was excited, and then obviously in overtime it didn't happen. But
yeah, and the crazy thing about that catch is that was Cole. I think it was his first target of the whole game. Cole Kmet,
which is even crazier, right?
Yeah,
in that situation.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Seahawks Niners. Obviously, more of a blowout. I didn't catch most of that game because it was so bad.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, and like you said, it was. I was surprised, right? I thought it would be closer, but it ended up being pretty much of a blowout, right? I guess that
opened up with that kick return for a touchdown.
Yeah, right, which is crazy. They always say that Seattle crowd maybe is one of the most it's one of the most intense places I think to play for an away team, right? Yeah. So, they're known to be them and like the Chiefs, right? Or some of the loudest stadiums, maybe. Not the Chiefs this year, but, the Seahawks. So I thought it would have been closer. It ended up being pretty much a blowout, right, in the end. But I think just playoff, and we've talked about this, playoff football in general is the best. Like, I love watching playoff football. I love, hearing the stories. It's just, it's the best time of the year.
Well, the one and done nature of it obviously makes it super exciting.
Oh, it's great.
But yeah, so let's move to the AFC. The Broncos played the Bills this week. Did you get to watch that game? What did you think about that one?
Yeah. So I did. I did watch that one. Also, was kind of surprised. I thought it was going to be super low scoring overall. Okay. I forgot what the final was, but
it was very high scoring.
It ended up being high scoring. And we know the Bills, right, didn't have as good of a season maybe as they've had the last couple of years, but I still thought they were very dangerous, right? They have playoff experience. You got a quarterback like that, you always have a chance. I thought they might have been able to win that game. But the Broncos, they just seem right when they need to, they pull it out. I mean, their record was one of the best records in football, and they were the number one seed. I was surprised, but they seem like they've really been playing well.
No, for sure. Yeah, I was kind of surprised too. I while watching that game, I thought it was over when the Broncos were up so hot, so big in the first half. But yeah, the Bills made it a game.
They did.
And the interception that Josh Allen threw in overtime was a killer.
Yeah, and that was it. I mean, you can't. I feel like he kept that team afloat the whole year. So I mean, I can't totally fault him, but you have a team like the Patriots in the AFC East that far surpassed everyone else in the end. So,
and that's the last game we'll talk from that round that we'll talk about, the Patriots and the Texans. How do you feel about that game?
Yeah.
Well, I know how you feel about that game, but get into your thoughts. Get into your thoughts on the game. Get into your fandom.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I was pulling for the Texans, right? I have some relatives that live out in Texas, so I know they're Texans fans. And of course, like you said, they're playing the Patriots, the arch nemesis of the Jets. And I mean, the Vrabel signing as the coach and the way they've had this turnaround from last year is, I mean, they're just firing right on all cylinders. It seems like they really, and I think Drake May, right? Just unbelievable. So I also was hoping that the Texans can pull it off, but I think the Patriots, right? They're just they had a great season, and their quarterback is playing so well that they're hard to beat. They're really hard to beat, I think.
For sure, and that's the next question. Since we're talking about the AFC right now, let's give a little preview of this weekend's action. What do you think about the Patriots and the Broncos? Obviously, Bo Nix out with the broken ankle, I believe.
Yes, that is crazy too, right? That he's out, and they're have to go to their backup. I forgot even who
Stidham
it is.
is ex-Patriot.
Yes, yeah, ex-Patriot. So I mean, right? If Bo Nix was playing, I think it would be a very close game, but I got to give the edge now to the Patriots.
Okay.
Being that they're going to be
begrudgingly, obviously.
Yeah, of course. But and right, the Broncos are saying all the right things. Oh, he knows the system, and it's not a big deal. Obviously, right? You got to save face there, but your backup coming in. Right, he hasn't played a game, I think, in a couple of years or something.
Yeah,
it's something crazy, right?
Nothing meaningful. Yeah.
So you got to give it to the Patriots, unfortunately.
And let's jump back to the NFC. What do you think about the Seahawks and the Rams?
Yeah.
Again, this is an interesting one because they're both NFC West division.
Yeah,
they played twice this
right.
year.
Yeah, they played twice. I like the Rams quarterback wise. I give the edge to the Rams. Both. Yeah, though the actual game itself, I honestly don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be close. Like you said, they both know each other, right? Because they play twice during the year, and I don't know. I can't remember who won, what the series was.
It was 1-1.
Was it
1-1.
So I think that's going to be a close game. I honestly couldn't even say, who I would favor. I guess at this point, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean I would favor the Rams, but their defense hasn't looked as good over the past couple of weeks. They were awful against Carolina in the wild card round, which is ridiculous. Carolina's not a good offense, but yeah, I would give the edge to the Rams. I would also agree with you that I would give the edge to the Patriots. So my Super Bowl matchup will be Rams-Patriots. I don't know if you've got any predictions. I know you say you're kind of too close to call on Rams-Seahawks. Is that basically
I think I would also pull for the Rams. I mean, like I said, I think it's going to be a close game. It sounds like you think so too. Or would you think?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on Darnold. Yeah, it depends on if
Right.
Darnold continues to maintain his play he's had this year.
I mean, he's right. Exactly right. If he can maintain that,
well, that's one of those Jets quarterbacks who didn't work out for the Jets, but seeming to
work out somewhere else. It's happened, right? Geno Smith, who I know didn't have
a little while,
but for a couple, right? He was pretty good in Seattle. He was great. So, I could see. I think I would agree. Maybe Patriots Rams, Super Bowl. I don't know if you want my Super Bowl pick.
Let's do it if you got one.
All right,
think about it. Give me a couple seconds of thought, and then just get to it. This isn't. I'm not gonna hold you to this. We're not gonna.
No.
We're not gonna have any bets or anything about this. But
I can't go with thinking the Patriots are gonna win, so I'm gonna go with the Rams just for good vibes. But I wouldn't be shocked though if the Patriots, with the way they're playing, if they won. I mean, I'm a Jets fan too, but it'd be amazing if the not in terms of like I would love it, but it literally would be amazing if the Patriots story,
won,
right?
Yeah, how quickly it turns around.
The turnaround is just insane, right? I mean, from last year,
That's what coaching does for you. Vrabel comes in, brings in Josh McDaniels as OC, and they're off and running.
Absolutely. It's really been unreal.
So let's move on to the post game. Give me your thoughts. And I've asked these exact same two questions of Rob Adams last week, but I'm going to frame them the exact same way. I'm not going to say much because I already told Rob that I'm not really paying as much attention to basketball and hockey as I should be. But I'll try and get to watch. I know some more about the Knicks than I know about the Rangers. But give me your thoughts on the Rangers season so far this year.
Yeah, I'm not like the biggest hockey fan, but I definitely am a Rangers fan. I kind of follow as much as I can. I went to a game recently, which was one of the worst live hockey games I've ever been to. I think they were down 6-0 at one point.
Right
after like the second period, and they made they got rid of a lot of guys who were kind of key guys, right? Kreider and some of those guys. And they have not looked good, right, this year. I mean, really at all. They've been inconsistent. They've gotten blown out a couple times. Shesterkin injury was a killer. One of their best players came back for like a game, or two, and then he was out again. And he was one of their best power play guys. So it's a lot of what I'm reading and hearing. They probably have to literally gut the team and like have a full rebuild.
Oh, no.
That's what it's looking like. So it's been a difficult the year for sure with the Rangers, especially when they were good, right? They look good over
Made the
the
Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah.
I mean, so they've really dropped off, and I think people are saying some of the moves that Drury, made aren't really coming to fruition. So it's been a rough season so far for the Rangers, and I don't think they're gonna necessarily even make the playoffs.
Wow. Okay. And I know you and I have kind of talked about this. Neither one of us liked the moves they made in terms of when they're actually happening, correct?
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, I was not in favor of really many of those, when they happened.
I mean, those are the players that brought them to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Exactly, right? And then, it drove me a little nuts.
I get that. But yeah, let's move on to the hardwood. How do you feel with the Knicks here? Obviously, slightly better, but they've also been down a little bit recently. I know.
Yeah, no. You're right. I mean, they started off really hot and they were playing well. Now I think they've lost something 8 out of 10 or something of their last games. They've kind of they've not looked as good, right? Recently, Brunson was out for a little bit, but then I spoke to someone who went to the game on MLK Day, and Brunson was back, and they still were down by a lot, and they ended up losing that game. So. I think they've hit a little bit of a bump in the road, right? They had a West Coast trip that is always difficult, right, when you go out west. But I think there's now a little, right, some more worry, right? Their expectations, of course, right? They got rid of Thibodeau, who took them pretty far, and that is probably discussion for another time. I was very shocked when that went down, but now the expectations, right, are like Eastern Conference Finals at least. Or it's, a bust. So I think the expectations on the team are super high, and the pressure is really on, right, with kind of what the expectations are.
No, for sure. And speaking of that game on MLK Day, I know that Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson had to respond after the game to being booed by the Madison Square Garden fans. Losing, I mean, I know they've been better, but the Mavericks are not a good team right now, and that's not a team you want to lose. By be blown out.
They blown out, right? And I think they were down by 30 something at one point.
Right? They were. Yeah, I was watching some of that game. Yeah.
So I mean, right? It's like Knicks. I think out of all the teams I root for, maybe right now the Knicks still have the most promise, right, compared to the Rangers and the Jets and the Mets. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
And I don't know how much we're going to get into it, but Arizona, I believe, is still number 2 in the country in college basketball. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm excited about that for sure. I try to watch games when I can. I'm probably not the most knowledgeable fan when it comes to college basketball, but I know they were 1 for a while, right? And like you said, they might be the number 2.
I think they're second, number 2 in the country.
Yeah. So I mean, I always enjoy that. When it comes to college football, right? They they were up and down.
That's some exciting seasons recently.
Yeah, but they've been better. So I always kind of that's the team I go for. College-wise, I mean, my alma mater is pretty much I share the same sentiment that Tony Kornheiser does. And,
I guess you're giving away where you went to school because people can look that up.
People are exactly. If you're well versed or you want to look it up, I don't even want to say the school, but the basketball team has been just absolute a total mess this year. I guess they had a lot of injuries, but it's they're just awful. They're really, really struggling this year, like they have been the last few years. So.
Yeah, and I know Rob Adams was saying that the Knicks have kind of struggled since the Emirates NBA Cup that happened in the middle of the season that they won.
Yep, that's I was speaking to someone about that earlier today. Right, you play that extra game, right?
Yep.
That doesn't count. Right? It doesn't count on the record, and then they make this...
Just a couple bucks.
Exactly, yeah, right. Just a few dollars for every player. And then, right, there's a trophy, and so who knows, that whole tournament, I don't know if it really benefited them in the end, besides their pockets, right? But
what are your thoughts on Jalen Brunson as a player and as kind of a face of the league kind of guy?
I think he's... Yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything negative about him. He seems like an all-out effort guy. He wants to win. He sort of takes the responsibility of being the face of the franchise seriously. So he's been pretty fantastic. I know he's had a couple injury issues, which happens, but when he's on, right, he can really almost take over a game. It seems like. So he's I think that Leon Rose, right? He made some moves and kind of got some players that have really stepped up for the Knicks. So I think in that sense, between trades and stuff, they seem like they made some good moves finally.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think again, you've got the Celtics who look good even without Jason Tatum. You've got the Cavs I think they've had a bit of a rough start recently, but they're obviously in the discussion for best team in the East. And maybe in the future you'll have the Pacers, but the Knicks should be right there for now and the coming years,
until they face the Detroit, right? They face the Pistons at some point, right?
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
It's a good point. We won't get into the Detroit Pistons, but that's a fun story too. They've kind of come out of nowhere to be really good this year.
Story, exactly. Yeah, it really has been.
They're another team to face. Yeah. Well, thanks, Andrew. I want to thank you for being my guest today. Good to see you again. I'll see you in a couple of weeks for the Super Bowl.
Yep, looking forward to that.
But yeah, thanks for being my guest.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.